more I read about conspiracy theories, the more I realize that part of their appeal is their simplicity. It's an understandable story. Like, we understand secrets. We understand joining together to do something and not letting other people know. That is really clear and understandable in human terms, in the way that we normally and naturally think about the world. Whereas reality is complicated and messy, and there are 2 sides of the story, 3 sides of the story, 5 sides of the story, and it's really hard to figure out what side you should be on, if any. That's reality. But a conspiracy theory is simple and clear, and it's obvious which side you should be on. And I think that may be part of its appeal. It's understandable in human terms. What I mean by human terms is that we naturally understand certain things about relationships and about motives, but politics can sometimes be abstract and less naturally understandable. And not just politics, but just life in general. Events in the world can often have multiple causes. People can often have multiple motivations. It can often be a very complex thing to sort out. And the mind doesn't want to do that for most things. The mind does not want to do that much work to figure all that out, to find all that out even. A nice, simple, clean, understandable story is a lot easier to deal with mentally. And there have been plenty of studies that show that the human brain tries to streamline. It tries to simplify. It doesn't like to do extensive work. And conspiracy theories are stories that are very easy to grasp. It doesn't take a lot of mental effort. So I finished the book, Conspiracy Theories and the People Who Believe Them, and I'm going to go through and I marked quite a few things that were kind of little tidbits, factoids, ideas that I wanted to share with you. I'm not going to read them to you, but I'm going to just share the idea with you. The first idea is that there's a kind of a battle going on between mainstream sources of news or information and conspiracy theories. And they're competing for space in people's heads. But conspiracy theories are specifically aimed at the conventional ways of getting information and mean to undermine them. That's one of the purposes of conspiracy theories. And the people that share them, one of their purposes in doing so is to make others doubt their sources, doubt the mainstream conventional establishment sources of information. So this is a battle between conspiracy theories and normal sources of information. The way they put it in the book is, this is a clash of ideas. And although the establishment sources of information have more money and more visibility and more authority, often, or at least sometimes, conspiracy theories win that clash of ideas. They dominate the space, either because the story is good or because it just happened, there's something about it that makes it very contagious, and so it spreads really fast. Whatever it is, sometimes conspiracy theories win out. And of course, sometimes conspiracy theories are true. But a lot of times, even when they're not true, they can still win the battle for the clash of ideas. I thought this was interesting. They're talking about how the whole discussion of climate change has altered from what should we do about climate change to, are scientists involved in a hoax? That's how powerful conspiracy theories can be. They've completely changed the conversation. The book, Conspiracy Theories and the People Who Believe Them, is a combination. It's a collection of articles by different people, or chapters by different people. And they all are experts in one way or another on conspiracy theories. So they're all coming from different angles. And one of them was just pointing out that there are some things that researchers have found about people who believe in conspiracy theories, and in what ways are they different from people that don't believe in conspiracy theories. And one of them is that those with a strong conspiracy theory worldview tend to make less money. The establishment forms of information produce stability. They're about stability. And conspiracy theories are about disruption. They are disruptive in the same way, and they can be disruptive in the sense that they can change the terms of a debate, like the climate change debate. They changed the terms of the debate. It has disrupted what would normally be a progression of, okay, we have these findings, okay, we're going to try to do something about it, but the debate has changed. And they did, other people did that with the terms of debate about whether smoking was bad for you. One of the things that I came across I thought was interesting is that, they were trying to figure out, where do these conspiracies come from? And they found that some of them came from satire sites like The Onion or Babylonian Bee or something like that. They come from the stories that were originally produced in order to be funny, and then they get shared, and then people take it seriously, and then that gets shared as a serious conspiracy theory. So that's at least one place where they come from. That's not the only place, but I thought that was interesting. Conspiracy theories are used to basically present a balance of power with the establishment forces. And they are often used by the weak to balance against power. I thought one of the things I thought was interesting, there's like a chapter on Afghanistan, like conspiracy theories in Afghanistan, a chapter on conspiracy theories in Russia, in Argentina, in Poland, in Europe, in the UK, and they're all different. But one of the things I thought was an interesting difference between conspiracy theories in Russia and conspiracy theories in the United States is that the conspiracy theories in Russia support the government. They are conspiracies, they posit conspiracies against the Russian government and the Russian people and the Russian country. And in the United States, the conspiracy theories tend to be against the government. It doesn't say this in the book, but I think probably one of the reasons for that is that I think in Russia, you're more likely to end up in a prison in Siberia if you were to present something that was against the government. But maybe not. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Russia by any means. One of the things that researchers have found is that conspiracy theorists are slow to change their mind. They're very difficult to convince that they're wrong. If you've ever tried to do that with anybody, which you probably have, you realize the truth of that. It's very difficult to change somebody's mind. It's almost like, and some of these findings show that the more you argue with somebody, sometimes the more tenaciously they dig into their point of view. And that's even despite the fact that sometimes a conspiracy theory lover holds incompatible theories, like that Osama bin Laden was already dead before the Navy SEALs got to him, and simultaneously the same person might believe that Osama bin Laden is still alive. One of the authors of one of the chapters of this book he's an expert on rumors and how to prevent rumors. And basically people that study that have found that rumors form in the absence of information. If there's a vacuum, then people will fill it. And so they're talking about, like, within a business, if you want to prevent rumors, then you make sure that you communicate what's going on to the people in the business, and then they have that information that they pass on to each other instead of rumors. So the more information and more transparency there is, the fewer rumors. And that is also the case with conspiracy theories. One of the authors there recommends that the more transparent the government is and the less secretive they are, the fewer conspiracy theories there will be about what the government is doing. Kind of makes sense. In some experiments, they have shown that people that are put in a position where they feel not in control are more likely to believe conspiracy theories. And when people have more control, or a feeling that they have more control, they're less likely to believe a conspiracy theory. Several of the authors have, looking at this from different angles, have pointed out that powerlessness and conspiracy theories tend to go together. People who feel powerless or not in control are more likely to believe conspiracy theories. That also means that when circumstances are uncertain, when times are uncertain, when there's a financial crisis or when there's a pandemic, for example, people would be more likely to believe in conspiracy theories when the sense of uncertainty is higher, when the sense of anxiety is higher, and when there seems to be less control over events in the world. Then conspiracy theories, theoretically, people should be more likely to believe conspiracy theories than when times are good and people are doing well and there seems to be some rationality and control over the events of the world. Then people would be less likely to believe conspiracy theories. Some of the people writing these chapters are historians, and so they're talking about the history of conspiracy theories. And one of the things they said is that there was conspiracy theories in America used to be about foreigners, that the Catholics are coming here and they want to take over the government or whatever. They were conspiracies of people working against the United States. And since I think they said the 50s, well, no, since after World War I, conspiracy theories became more and more about our own government. And part of that, I think, is that true stories have come out about things that CIA have done, for example, or, people in government lying, or us being the people of the United States being misled and lied to by the government. That's probably a lot of places, I guess partly at least, where that comes from. But I thought it was an interesting shift. The historians also said that after World War II, it became more commonplace. People that believed in conspiracy theories became more commonplace. Before that, it was a relatively fringe phenomenon. One of the phenomenon that they've talked about a lot in these chapters is that people who believe in conspiracy theories really, a lot of times, don't really believe them. They kind of believe that they are believers in conspiracy theories, but any particular conspiracy theory they may not have really strong confidence in. But they like the idea of challenging the status quo or challenging the established norms of information. That's what they really believe in. Any particular conspiracy theory, they may or may not have a lot of confidence in it. One of the historians has said that, a lot of people think that conspiracy theories are somehow a threat to democracy. But he said, no, these are actually essential elements in all democracies. One of the authors said that conspiracy theories are kind of knowledge that exists outside the establishment forms of knowledge. In another chapter where they talk about how would you know whether a conspiracy theory is true or not. And one of the factors they said to look at is that the more actors involved, the more people that are part of the conspiracy, the less likely it is to be true, because the more people you have, the more whistleblowers you have in potential. And it's just harder for more people to keep a secret like that. One of the authors said that you can think of this as a kind of a psychological trait, this sort of naturally looking at powerful people. It's kind of like a bias against power, really. And just to naturally see somebody in power as likely to be up to no good and colluding with other people with power. Some of these guys talk about basically conspiracy theory lovers are their own category of partisanship. Somebody can be on the left, somebody can be on the right, and somebody can be a conspiracy theorist that is neither left nor right, or you could be a conspiracy theorist on the left and conspiracy theorist on the right. But it is its own category of bias. I thought this was a good way to put it. conspiracy theories challenge the official story. They provide a counter narrative to the official story. Apparently, some people have proposed the idea that you could just somehow ban conspiracy theories, just make it so that they cannot show up in newspapers, on the news, on YouTube, on Facebook, anywhere. They're just banned, automatically banned. And one of the things that the main editor of this thing, Joseph Usinski, said was that you wouldn't want that. That is not a good idea, because if you cannot present conspiracy theories, then anybody who does actually want to form a conspiracy has free reign. The corollary to that is that you would want to approach conspiracy theories on a case-by-case basis. You'd want to look at each conspiracy theory and not throw out the category of conspiracy theories automatically. You wouldn't want to immediately dismiss conspiracy theories, because there are sometimes authentic conspiracies in the world. Basically, what they're saying is that there is a marketplace of ideas, and conspiracy theories compete in that marketplace really well. It's juicier, more pass-onable. Conspiracy theories are exactly the kind of thing, rumor-like things that people like to pass on, that are enjoyable to pass on, whereas reality is often boring, detailed, complicated, not very shareable. So in the marketplace of ideas, even though some of these conspiracy theories are ridiculous, they're still juicier and more fun to pass on than reality. Established forms of knowledge have to compete for space in people's minds with conspiracy theories. And established forms of knowledge are built on established forms of ferreting out what's true. And conspiracy theories have an entirely different way of ferreting out what's true. So they are necessarily in competition with each other. They're necessarily antagonists. When they study the arguments made by conspiracy theorists in their conversations online, researchers have found that conspiracy theorists tend to make negative arguments. Instead of arguing in favor of their theory, they argue against the established theory. That points to the broader finding that these guys have found, that conspiracy theorists, when they say, I believe in this conspiracy theory, or they are posting it and talking about it like they believe it, they may not actually believe it in the sense of feeling certain about it. They may think it might be likely. They may think it's possible. They may just not like the established theory. And that's usually the case. They don't have a really high belief in any particular theory. But they do have a strong skepticism toward the standard or established story or narrative. And they can even have contradictory beliefs. Like they might believe that Princess Diana was murdered and also believe that she's still alive. And that seems really crazy until you realize that when they say they believe this theory, they only mean something like they hold that it's possible, and are not committed to it like you and I might be committed to that gravity exists or the earth is round. So there's many, many levels of belief, and their belief in any particular conspiracy theory might not be very strong at all, which makes it a little more understanding that they would have conflicting conspiracy theories about the same person. And although people might be not really strong believers in any particular conspiracy theory, one thing that's really common among conspiracy theories is that there are evil people doing bad things on purpose. And that is a really central theme in these stories. And so it's a really strong feature of conspiracy theorists that they have a deep distrust. And not only do they have a deep distrust, but they also want to encourage others to have a distrust. They want to generate distrust with their sharing of conspiracy theories and arguing about their conspiracy theories and trying to cause other people to doubt the generally accepted narrative. And this is one of the themes that's really common throughout this book, is that distrust is a central feature of conspiracy theories, and that a functioning democracy needs both trust and distrust. You need a certain amount of trust for just the machinery of a democratic society to function, and you need to make sure that there's enough distrust that people can't get away with. People in power can't get away with screwing people over. So you need both. You need a combination of both. And there are, our conventional trust for conventional sources of information, scientists and news outlets and stuff like that is fine, but it needs to be balanced with a certain amount of distrust for those in power, those with money, those with political or other kinds of power. And those need to be constantly playing against each other. So conspiracy theories have a part to play in a healthy democracy, and they exist in every healthy democracy. Or hell, they don't say that in this book, but they must exist in every kind of government. Although I just found out that in Thailand, at least, it's illegal to criticize the king of Thailand. It's a 15 years in prison for criticizing the king. So maybe there they don't have conspiracy theories, at least about the king. One of the points that one of the authors made in this book is that there's a deep distrust built into the structure of our government by having a separation of powers, an institutional separation of powers. It is a safeguard against somebody getting too much power. So they were clearly knew enough about the nature of power to distrust power in general and built it into our system. It doesn't prevent people from conspiring and doing evil things, obviously. It still happens. But it just makes it so that this is not this distrust of the government, this distrust of people in power, rich people, is not a new phenomenon, clearly. It's been around for a long time. And it's perfectly justified by history. They were talking about also another kind of distrust that creates a balance is partisan trust. The left not trusting the right not trusting the left, and that helps keep people honest, or it goes a long way to keeping people honest, and the separation of powers goes a long way to keeping people honest. And so, oddly enough, this suspicion and distrust actually creates or encourages genuine, trustable policies and organizations and politicians, and this general distrust and suspicion helps make trustable organizations and institutions. So although distrust may be a key feature that's important to retain, it can also go too far to where somebody is really cynical and apathetic even, and not engaged in the actual politics and running of things. So it can be, you can have too much trust and you can have too much distrust to the point where you're functionally impotent. I was planning on not quoting anything, but I'm just going to read this one sentence because I thought it was well said. Distrust, in short, can lead to either scrutiny or withdrawal, to active opposition and popular vigilance, or to defeatism and resentment. It seems to me that the partisan divide in the United States right now, and in other places around the world, it seems a little too much. There's too much partisan distrust, to the point where it's really hard for Congress, for example, to get anything done. They're so suspicious of each other, and they're so distant from each other, from understanding the other side and understanding what they want and what they care about, what they value, that it's like they're talking to aliens. They don't even understand what they're talking about. I think that it's like the distrust is a little too much. There needs to be a little more trust. And I remember in the book The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, which is a really great book, he talks in there about how they changed the rules in Congress a while back. So that it used to be that Congress people interacted with each other quite a bit on either side of the aisle. They were just, they would be friends. Their spouses knew each other. Their kids went to school together. They all lived in Washington, D.C. and got to know each other, which made them really understandable. as people, and that is true in each of our lives. If you don't have anybody in your life that's a good friend of yours that you can talk to and that you talk politics to, that's on the other side of the aisle, you will have a tendency to think the people on the other side of the aisle are fucking crazy. They're out of their minds. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any facts. They're ignorant or stupid or crazy, right? Because you don't know any and you haven't talked to any personally. But if you do have some in your life and you guys talk and you have good conversations and you get to know what they're thinking and why they believe what they believe, then they don't seem so crazy and you could work things out easier. And that's what's not happening in Congress right now. What they changed was that the Congress people are only coming to Washington, D.C. just for sessions. And then the rest of the time they move back to their hometowns. And so they don't interact as much, not nearly as much as they used to. And now they're talk to each other like they're aliens and they don't get along as well. So that there's too much distrust there, and there could be more trust, or at least more, because once you get to know somebody, of course you trust them more if they're a good person, And most people in Congress they're good people. They're regular people. I mean, most of them. And of course, you could go too far the other way too. If people were too trustworthy, then it'd make it easier for people who do want to do something nefarious to do it. If people were too trusting, obviously, you have to have some sort of balance there. But I think right now there's a little too much distrust, and it interferes with things going well. And that's just my opinion. That is not the point of view of the people who wrote this book. Well, it is the point of view of some of them, but not all of them. Psychologists say that what moves people is not necessarily reason or evidence, but narratives. And some narratives move people more than others. For example, betrayal or corruption or sex. They capture our attention better than others. And so you could have a perfectly good story about something that is full of facts and evidence and is boring as all get out. And then you could have a story about scandal and sex and everybody's talking about it. It's just more shareable. That's kind of what our brains are as a social primate. That's what our brains are interested in, is betrayal and sex and corruption. So conspiracy theories don't have the establishment behind them. They don't have the money and the power and the authority and all that behind them, but they do have this primal attraction, the compelling nature of their subject matter that can actually, so they can compete very well with established sources of information. This I thought was really tight and succinct. By definition, conspiracy theories identify a virtuous group under threat from a nefarious enemy. So they are a way of uniting one group against another. You could even look at it like a motivational technique, conspiracy theories, to galvanize one group against another. And since the threat of loss is much more compelling than the potential for gain, then these have a compellingness that other kinds of narratives don't. Conspiracy theories are about you being screwed over by somebody. And so they have that element of betrayal and loss, potential loss, and moral outrage. That is all of that. It's just such a great combination to arrest your attention. Conspiracy theories gain the most traction when they attack the most powerful people or groups in the society. This isn't really in the book, but I have noticed that I've been reading a lot of conspiracy theories by conspiracy theorists. And one of the things that I've found is that they tend to overstate. They tend to say, for example, if they said something like, they're trying to undermine America. Who's trying to undermine America? I mean, there may be some people who are trying to undermine America and a bunch of other people who are not trying to. This is one of the problems of dealing with it, is that it's almost, I mean, I've been watching these videos like zeitgeist and stuff. And they say these things, and it's like you need this written down, and then you could completely take apart the all the statements. But I mean, but if you watch the whole thing and then tried to have a conversation about it, it's like, I can't remember all the details, but there was so many things in there that were wrong and misstated and overstated and vaguely stated. And probably if you were going through them looking for fallacies, like logical fallacies, it would be rich with logical fallacies. But it's so full of them that you almost can't even hardly untangle it. You'd have to have it written down. I mean, it would be really easy, I think, for somebody that knew a lot about reasoning to just go through it line by line and go, well, this is badly, constructed, and this is clearly a fallacy, and and so on. But you put it all together, and talking to somebody that doesn't know any of that and isn't skeptical and actually has a tendency to want to believe it, then they just accept it, hook, line, and sinker. One of the authors in here I thought made a really good point. He said anybody that rejects conspiracy theories because they're conspiracy theories is irrational. And anybody who just automatically rejects the conventional information from conventional sources because they're conventional is also being irrational. The reason it is not rational, of course, is because you should be looking at the evidence and looking at reason and looking at the actual argument, not categorizing it and rejecting the whole categories, because there are, in fact, real conspiracies, and conventional sources are, in fact, right quite a bit. Speaking of fallacies, one fallacy is called the Ad Hominem Fallacy, and that's when somebody makes their case, and instead of answering their argument or answering the case they just made, you say, I heard you had an affair on your wife or whatever, having nothing to do with the argument, having nothing to do with the topic that you're discussing, but undermining the person himself. This is used a lot, obviously, in politics especially. It's like you attack the person, ad hominem, meaning to the person. Well, it's doing the same thing if you say, well, you're a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not going to listen to anything that you say. That's an ad hominem attack, basically, saying, because you're a conspiracy theorist, I'm not going to listen to a word that comes out of your mouth. Well, each conspiracy theory should be evaluated on its own merits, on the value of and the validity of the evidence and the reasoning, and not dismissed out of hand. Now, of course, most of us don't have time to explore and delve into very many conspiracy theories. So we're going to be exerting our judgment and going, well, I'm not even going to look at the Flat Earth Society's theories, or whatever. I mean, you're going to have to make some choices because you just don't have that kind of time. But to completely disregard a conspiracy theory only because it's conspiracy theory is just as stupid as disregarding anything that comes out of the mouth of a conventional source of information only because it's a conventional source. They're both irrational. One of the findings of the researchers is that people that reject science, both on the left and the right, tend to be people that believe in conspiracy theories. There's a direct correlation between the amount of conspiracy thinking and rejection of science. This was really surprising. So they asked people, do you believe that increases in the Earth's temperature over the last century are due more to the effects of pollution from human activities or natural changes in the environment that are not due to human activities? Now, listen to this. In 2001, when they asked people this, 61% of Americans thought human activities were to blame. 33% thought natural causes were the more likely source. That was 2001. In 2014, those numbers were 57 and 40%. So in other words, 33% back in 2001 thought natural causes were the more likely source, and 40% in 2014. So the people who believe that climate change is caused by humans has gone down, not up. There's more evidence now for it than there was in 2001. and there was plenty of evidence then. But it has actually, the number of people who believe it has gone down. Conspiracy theories are winning so far. And of course, it's not just conspiracy theories. There are people who are actively promoting these conspiracy theories for their own reasons. For example, the oil industry, trying to make people not quite so sure whether we should be doing anything or spending any money or doing or changing our lives for something that maybe is true and maybe it isn't. That's the point of view that they are trying to get across. And anybody really that's in the oil industry, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the oil industry within every country, all the people in the oil industry, I would now that sounds like a conspiracy, but a lot of people in the oil industry, to keep the oil industry going, need to do something about this growing evidence about climate change. And so they're actively promoting points of view and successfully making more and more people doubt that it's human beings who are causing this and that we should do something about it. Another one of the findings I thought was interesting is that whichever side of the aisle is not in power becomes more conspiracist in their thinking. So when Republicans are in office, or the Congress is dominated by Republicans, then there's more liberal conspiracy theorists. And when Democrats dominate Congress and the presidency, then there are more conservative conspiracy theorists. So people with less power are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. One of the things that psychologists have found is that there are certain psychological traits that make people more likely to be conspiracy theorists. And one of those traits, of course, is suspiciousness, lacking trust in institutions. But they also find that these people just generally lack trust. They're suspicious of neighbors and friends and coworkers, and they have a more suspicious mind. And that is something I have noticed about people that promote conspiracy theories, is they automatically see ulterior motives or the potential for ulterior motives, and that things can't possibly be. That's where they come from, is that things can't be what they seem. And if you're looking at the world that way, it'd be easy to formulate conspiracy theories of your own, as well as you would believe others that you hear. If you automatically take whatever they're saying it is the case, and you automatically think it can't be the case, it's whatever it is that they're saying, it's not that, then it would be, you'd naturally be a conspiracy theorist if you just had that trait alone. Another psychological characteristic that kind of identifies somebody, or at least is associated with somebody that's a little more conspiracy theorist, is that they feel outside of mainstream society, which makes sense also. Of course, these are just tendencies. Some people are conspiracy theorists and do not feel like they're outsiders. I thought this was a good way to think about conspiracy theories in general, is if your party is the one that lost the election, then you would be more likely to believe in a conspiracy about vote counting or something like that than the party that won. Makes sense. So there's a bit of motivated reasoning, even if it's unconscious, in people, and in people who believe in a conspiracy. You would just naturally be more likely to believe a conspiracy if you thought for sure your candidate was going to win, and then the candidate doesn't win. It would be really easy to jump to the conclusion that something nefarious had happened. I think looking at it that way, it kind of makes it a little easier to be sympathetic to people that are conspiracy theory likers. They may be in that position that they feel like they've lost out on something, or that that they're the loser in some way. And one of these guys says conspiracy theories are for losers, and he means specifically not that they're losers in life, but that they've lost something. They've lost the election, or they're not succeeding in their life, or whatever. They're in some way on the losing end, and it's a very natural thing to kind of blame some outside force for your loss. It's very natural, very human. And I think I think that position makes it easier to sympathize with people who are big believers in conspiracy theories. When they do surveys of people, they find that half of Americans believe in at least one conspiracy theory. And I would probably say it's higher than that. I'd say probably pretty much everybody believes in some conspiracy theory, and some of them are true. Like the one I just told you about the oil industry, that is a theory, obviously, but you can make a really good case for it, and I believe in that. So I'm a believer in that conspiracy theory, and I'm sure there's others that I believe in. So this is only a graduated scale of belief in conspiracy theories, from people who really believe a lot of them and are really into them, and people who only believe a few. We're not that different from each other. I think it's unfortunate that there's a real animosity between those who basically don't believe in conspiracy theories or think they don't, and people who do. That, people who do believe in conspiracy theories think that people who don't are just naive and just sheeple, and the people who don't believe in conspiracy theories just think they're nuts. They're just off the deep end. And I think it would be good for everybody to have a little more sympathy for each other. We're not all that different from each other. And I think it would be better. I think it would be good if that happened, because people would talk more, not argue and just like make their point and run away, but actually have relationships with people that think differently than they do and talk it out. Both I'm talking partisanship and also conspiracy theory and not conspiracy theory. We need to be talking to people that don't really think like us more and have relationships with them, not just argue with them, but have real relationships with them, and talk about those things, not just have a relationship, but actually be in conversations about those things that you disagree with, but with sympathy and understanding and compassion for each other and real conversations. And because I think it'd be good for more people to have those kinds of conversations. It'd be good for the world. I also think that in those conversations, when you are in those conversations, to try to go one level up from, at least sometimes, from the just conversing about what you disagree about, to go one level up and talk about some of the stuff about conspiracy theories themselves. Or like I mentioned in a previous podcast, when you're talking to people, if you're on the right and you're talking to somebody that's on the left, and you start to disagree, to go one level up and start talking about Jonathan Haidt's work and the experiments done on the differences in the moral foundations between the left and the right. It changes the quality and pleasure of the conversation quite a bit if you can go one level up. And so you can do this when you're talking to somebody that's a conspiracy theorist, or if you are a conspiracy theorist, talking to somebody that's not a conspiracy theorist, and talk about conspiracy theories themselves. Talk about sources of knowledge, and what you agree on are valid sources of knowledge and reasoning. And so you're instead of talking specifically about a particular conspiracy theory, to be talking about the general realm of knowledge itself. I guess I mean talking about principles rather than specifics. Sometimes. I mean, you also need to be talking about specifics, but sometimes if it starts to get a little heated, it's a nice move to go up one level, to sort of make a meta comments, or talk about more fundamental principles than particulars. Psychologists also found that when people feel when they feel out of control, they're more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. They did one experiment, for example, that where they had people write out a story to recall an incident where they felt out of control or in control. Half of them wrote about a time when they were out of control, and half of them wrote about a time they were in control. And then they tested them on several things, and They found that people were more likely to have conspiratorial thinking if they had just recalled being out of control. So when people feel out of control, and this is but one of many studies have been done on this, that when people feel like they don't have control or they feel uncertain, they're more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. And I think it gives people more of a sense of control when they can understand what's happening. Like their mind. They also found that their mind has a tendency to see patterns. They're more likely to see patterns in random information. And so they think that their brains are seeking patterns, seeking stable order and control, and so it makes them more likely to see things in terms of conspiracies. Which, of course, would mean that if somebody just lost their job, or they were something out of their control happened, a disaster, a earthquake, or even that, they might be more likely, or 9/11, for example, they may be more likely to think in conspiratorial terms than when things are going well for them, when they feel in control, when they understand the world. I'm going to quote again from this book, again, just one sentence, but I thought it just had a lot of clarity in it. A successful conspiracy theory explains important events or social conditions, implicates a group seen as both powerful and immoral, and provides a coherent motivation for the conspirators. That was from a section called What Makes Particular Theories More Appealing. So there you go. A good conspiracy theory explains important events or social conditions, implicates a group as both powerful and immoral, and provides a coherent motivation for the conspirators. It makes sense. That's one of the appeals to it. It makes sense. It's really easy to make sense of something that human beings have no problem understanding selfish and immoral motivations. And when bad things happen, it's really easy to understand it in those terms. There must have been evil people behind it who plotted it and made it happen for their own selfish reasons, for gain. Really easy to understand the world in those terms. May not be the case. The real situation may be much more complex and nuanced, and there may be many actors with different motivations and complex circumstances. The situation might be so complex that it's more difficult to grasp and more abstract because there's a lot of factors involved. Whereas it's really easy and simple to understand. There's evil people who are doing something bad and screwing somebody over and keeping it a secret. That's all very easy for the human mind to understand. One of the more interesting perspectives on conspiracy theorists is that believing in conspiracy theories is a kind of style choice. It's a way to signal your fellow tribe members. It's a way to signal what group you're in to others. And I believe I've seen this, and I think it's accurate, at least for some people. That may explain why sometimes it's not that important how much they believe in any particular conspiracy theory, but that they believe in conspiracy theories, that they're willing to promote conspiracy theories, puts them in a category, an age group maybe, or just like obviously if it's a conspiracy theory that is about the evil Democrats, then it puts you in a certain partisan tribe. But we are in a mixed society, and you never know. You can't tell often by just looking at somebody what tribe they're in. I mean, sometimes you can. I mean, obviously the way that you dress is also a way to declare and signal to others what tribe you're in. But if you're, an actual tribe in, say, let's say an African tribe in, 500 years ago, each tribe had their own distinctive things. Like they might have a ring through their nose, or they might have, they dress a certain way. And you see in pictures of tribes like that, they all dress very similar, usually. And they're distinguishing themselves from other nearby tribes. and they might speak differently. They appear differently. They are all trying to find a way to identify who are members of their own tribe and who are not. But in this society, we have a huge mix of all kinds of people. So how do you signal to other people what tribe you're in? Well, one way you can do that is by promoting conspiracy theories. Here's another one. People who feel relatively powerless are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. And also, when they're asked about their prejudice, they are prejudiced against people with power. Also, people who believe in conspiracy theories are more likely to believe that they themselves would do that very thing. So, for example, people who thought that Princess Diana was murdered were more likely to say that if they were the royal family, they would have had her murdered. That kind of makes sense. If you're kind of a devious person yourself, you'd be more likely to see deviousness in other people or everywhere you look. It's pretty easy to think of conspiracy theories as being a problem of, if you think of it as a problem of reason and inability to effectively think. But it's more, at least some researchers believe, that it's more of a social phenomenon. Most people who believe in conspiracy theories don't make them up themselves. They hear them and share them, pass them on to other people. So it's a social activity. And from my personal experience, it doesn't really disabuse somebody of their conspiracy thinking when you reason with them or you point out the flaws in the logic of the video they just shared with you. In fact, it seems like it makes them even stronger believers in the conspiracy theories, which makes you think that it's not really a flaw in logic or in ability to think. It's something else. And if you were going to try to do something about it, you'd have to do something about something else besides their ability to reason. As a matter of fact, some of the studies looked into people's ability to understand scientific principles or the ability to reason. And they find that for the most part, people who believe in conspiracy theories are just as able to understand science and just as able to reason as other people. It's not necessarily a fault in reasoning. Some of the researchers basically said that conspiracy theories are basically rumors, and they could be just as easily called conspiracy rumors. And rumors are something social. It also means that conspiracy theories probably means that all the understanding that psychologists have about rumors would apply to conspiracy theories. So, for example, researchers have found that within a company, for example, if the company is not forthcoming with their information about their company, then rumors are more abundant and spread faster. So in the absence or in the vacuum formed by a lack of information, rumors are more likely to spread. And I would imagine that would be the case with conspiracy theories too. Rumors tend to arise under circumstances where people feel threatened. So if you were in a company and they started having meetings all the time with the upper management and everybody looked serious, the employees might feel nervous about that, and that would get people talking, and that would get rumors starting to fly. And I think that's probably applicable to conspiracy theories too, that when things seem threatening, when something seems kind of scary or makes you nervous, and there's no good explanation forthcoming, then people will make up their own explanations, and people will be eager to hear explanations and pass on explanations that seem to make some kind of sense. And that's a rumor, and that's also a conspiracy theory. Or if the rumor is about a group of people doing something nefarious, then that rumor is like a special category of rumor called a conspiracy theory. Researchers have also found that people that feel a higher level of anxiety are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. In one experiment, they had one group of people were just watching TV, and the other group were writing about a time when they felt very uncertain. And then they presented them with a conspiracy theory. And the ones that were prompted to think about a time when they felt uncertain were more likely to believe the conspiracy theory. According to the researchers, conspiracy theories are almost always wrong. And they said the reason is that although some conspiracy theories come about because people are actually trying to find the truth, there are many other reasons or motivations that people might have to spread conspiracy theories. There's, for example, enhancing your own group. We're the cool people and those guys are evil. Or there's, revenge. You want to get revenge on the evil group. Or there's, self-enhancement, they call it, which is where you're saying something and by saying it, you're identifying that you're part of the in group. So there are other motivations that somebody might have for spreading a rumor or spreading a conspiracy theory that have nothing to do with fact finding. And they also found out that when there's a real consequence to the rumor, that people tend to be more accurate. The rumors tend to be more accurate. They use the example, if you're in a company and there's rumors that people are going to get laid off, usually those rumors are true because people really care about it, and there's consequences to the truth of the matter. But when there is no consequences, when there are no consequences, people are less likely to. It becomes less important whether it's true or not. There are other purposes for the spreading of the rumors or the conspiracy theories besides informing other people of accurate information. Another reason why conspiracy theories are more likely to be untrue is that the motivations of self-enhancement and of group identity or relationship enhancement are more important to people than the motivation to be accurate. Another reason that that conspiracy theories are so often wrong is that people who are conspiracy theorists, generally speaking, don't think of conventional sources of information as being valid. So they have a harder time actually finding the truth because they ignore so much established, authoritative, substantiated information. And a third reason why people tend to pass on conspiracy theories that are not true is that conspiracy theorists tend to stay in sort of in-group echo chambers of information and isolate themselves from information from outside that group. And that means that within that group, you rarely hear a dissenting opinion. The common ground of all conspiracy theories is that someone is getting away with something. Several of the chapters in this book are kind of the history of conspiracy theories, including one about the history of conspiracy theories specifically in the United States. And they've been around for a long time. And I think I told you already that it shifted from being, conspiracies about powerful outside others it shifted over to conspiracy theories about the U.S. government itself. And I was just thinking that I wonder if they don't say this in there, but I wonder if it's because the U.S. government became more powerful. That outside threats perhaps were the most powerful and therefore the most feared things. And then at some point, the U.S. government became the most powerful thing in the world. And then, of course, conspiracy theories started shifting toward our own government. And I would imagine, although they didn't say anything about that in there, I wonder if conspiracy theories around the world have shifted to conspiracies about the U.S. government since it has become the most powerful government or force in the world, the most powerful financially and militarily powerful thing in the world. I wonder if not just within the United States, but around the world, conspiracy theories have grown about the U.S. government. It would make sense if conspiracy theories are about fear of power and suspicion about powerful people. It would make sense that the object of these conspiracy theories would shift to the more powerful thing. So now I imagine if as China becomes more powerful, probably there are more conspiracy theories about the Chinese government now. One of the chapters goes into detail on the history of different conspiracies, not theories, but the actual conspiracies that have happened in the United States, like the Iran-Contra deal and MK Ultra and so on. They talk about real conspiracies that happened and how those led to people being more conspiracy theorists. But I wanted to say, if you are a conspiracy believer listening to this, that you should be more selective about what conspiracy theories that you promote or share, because you wouldn't want to share so many that people just automatically discount or disregard or dismiss any conspiracy theory they hear because they've heard so many. They all seem crazy. They don't even listen to them anymore. You should be much more selective and make sure that you have a really good conspiracy theory before you pass it on, because you don't want a cry wolf kind of a situation where people just stop listening, because there are real conspiracies sometimes and they need to be revealed when they happen, and people need to be able to hear it and listen to it if it happens. So if you're a conspiracy passer-oner, think carefully and look carefully at the conspiracy theories that you're passing on and make sure you only share really good ones. Another factor in creating a conspiracy believer is partisanship. So the more of a believer you are in the left or the right, the more likely you are to believe in conspiracy theories. This is what they call motivated reasoning. So you're looking for a way to be a partisan, and one way to do that is with a conspiracy theory. And basically the powerful evil other, in this case, is the other side of the aisle. I think I've already mentioned that people who are on the losing side of an election tend to become more conspiratorial. And one of the studies they did was during the 2016 election, when Donald Trump won. They had tested Republicans and Democrats before and after the election. Before the election, they were both equally conspiratorial in their thinking. After the election, Republicans became less conspiratorial and Democrats became more conspiratorial in their thinking. According to the psychological models, conspiracy theories should really spread rampantly when there is a lack of information about a threatening thing. So right now, as I'm doing this, we're in the middle of the coronavirus lockdown of 2020. And sure enough, I mean, one of the most salient characteristics of this time is we don't know yet. You hear that from scientists and politicians all day long. We don't know enough about this. We don't know if you get immune to it after you've gotten it. We don't know when there's going to be a vaccine. We don't know what the death rate is. It's just nonstop. We don't know how many people are going to die. We don't know how long this lockdown is going to last, and so on. And that's like the perfect conditions for conspiracy theories to really spread. And in fact, the reason I'm even talking about conspiracy theories is I noticed a steep rise in conspiracy theories on Facebook. And so it made me curious about it. Strange that it would suddenly jump up like that. And now it seems very understandable. When people are anxious and there's a lack of information, people fill in the gaps. There's a definite vacuum of information that people will fill. Not only will people fill it, but they will be eager to hear it. They want to know what's going on. They want some sense of understanding of what's happening, some explanation of what's happening, and that's exactly what conspiracy theories are for. I should say, really, that's what rumors are for, and conspiracy theories being a subcategory of a kind of rumor. Some of these authors say that conspiracy thinking is for losers, and they mean that in a whole bunch of different ways. And here's another way. When they study different countries who are doing better economically tend to have fewer conspiracy theories in their country. And conspiracy thinking is higher in countries that are doing poorly. Also, countries that have greater levels of inequality have higher conspiracy thinking. Conspiracy believers are more likely to be poor and more likely to have less education than people who don't think as much in terms of conspiracies. And they tend to have a narrower group of friends. This is, of course, not true with all of them, but they're more likely to have a smaller group of friends than people who are not conspiracy theorists. I should add this. I'll quote the book here because I think this is important to balance all the rest of this here. Yes, conspiracy theorists tend to get it wrong, but the skeptical mindset they participate in, when used correctly, is essential to the proper functioning of modern democracies. To want to eradicate that completely would be to want to eradicate all dissent. Belief in conspiracy theories is often linked to a perception that the social world is a dangerous, uncontrollable, and unpredictable place. I'm going to quote from the book again. General state anxiety, evoked simply by waiting for an examination, can lead to greater endorsement of conspiracy theories. They basically say that people are trying to deal with the uncontrollable nature of reality by having conspiracy theories. But what they said is it kind of backfires on them. People that believe in conspiracy theories, they do it to gain a sense of control and predictability and understandability of the world, but then they become more anxious because of the conspiracy theories. They're perceiving the world as an unsafe, hostile place. And the remedy has become something that makes their anxiety worse. For the people that study these things, there's a lot of overlap, apparently, between conspiracy theories or conspiracism and religious thinking. There's a lot of things that are very similar about the two. And I've thought the same thing. It feels sometimes like people who are fans of conspiracy theories seem to have a kind of religious fervor about it. And this, at the same time, hard to change their minds. In the same way you can't change somebody's mind usually about their religious beliefs either. Are conspiracy theories harmless entertainment? No, definitely not. They affect what people believe, affects what they do in this world. And there have been a lot of people doing things with conspiracy theories, acting on beliefs they got from a conspiracy theory that harms things, like people that don't believe in vaccinations and don't get their children vaccinated, and then the child dies of a disease that could have easily been prevented. These stories are not harmless. One of the characteristics of conspiracy theories is usually that they're hard to falsify. The conspiracy theory is put together selecting evidence, ignoring other evidence, discounting it for some reason or another. It's part of the conspiracy or whatever. And so it's really hard to, the way these guys talked about it several times is that the conspiracy theory is self-sealing. It can't be really undone. The way that it's constructed, it can't be proven wrong. Unlike scientific papers, a conspiracy theory only presents the side that supports their point of view and ignores or is completely silent on anything that calls their view into question. So anybody that really doesn't know anything about the subject and just listens to a presentation like that, it can be completely convinced because it looks like overwhelming evidence. I told you earlier that people who recall an incident where they were out of control were more likely to believe a conspiracy theory, but I forgot to tell you that the other side is also true. People who recalled an incident where they were in control believed conspiracy theories less. It lowered their belief in conspiracy theories to feel more in control. So this is a possible, I guess, remedy for excessive conspiracy theory thinking, is helping somebody become more in control of their life, feel more in control. giving them tools or, empowering them in some way so that they feel that they have more control over the event, over their own fate. Along those same lines, remember I said earlier that people who had more education were less likely to believe conspiracy theories? Well, there are two reasons for that. One is that people that have more education usually have more money, are more successful. And so they're more in control of their lives in that sense. And they also have noticed that that people that are more educated are more able to deal with more complex ideas and don't try to simplify ideas. And I've noticed that about conspiracy theory enthusiasts, is that they kind of oversimplify things, overstate things, and try and just jump on a single explanation or a single causal factor, when, in most circumstances, it is the case that more than one thing is influencing the outcome here, and its issues are sometimes very complex. And conspiracy theories kind of reduce it down and simplify it and make it much easier to comprehend, but also make it less accurate. And so people that are more educated have a tendency to be less likely to oversimplify and to be willing to deal with the complexity of an issue. One of the things they talk about in here is that there's multiple motives that you could have for sharing a conspiracy theory, including self-enhancement, including bonding with other people, revenge for the people in power. There are other motives, but one of the motives could be fact-finding and fact-sharing. So like mentioned earlier, in a company, if there's rumors that you might get laid off, people really care about that whether that's true or not. And when the motive is fact-finding, then the conspiracy theory that's being passed on is more likely to be accurate. When it's any other motive, it's less likely to be accurate. So that means if you're listening to somebody and they are passing on to you conspiracy theories that are clearly nonsense, then they have other motives besides fact-finding, probably, very likely. And it would be interesting to look at it and try to wonder what motives do they have? What are they trying to get you to, or get their friends to join them in this worldview? Are they trying to find out if you are one of them in their tribe? Are they trying to just, one of the motives is self-enhancement. And this is like, if you and I are in the same tribe, if we believe the same thing, and I signal that I'm a member of this tribe, and you signal back to me that you are also a member of that tribe, then we have just formed a bond. So that's what they call relationship enhancement. We just enhanced our relationship. And at the same time, if they're sharing a piece of information with me and they know that I care about it, then they've also enhanced themselves. They've said, hey, I'm a card-carrying member of this group and I have just helped you. And one of the things they point out is that people in your in-group will forgive you if your rumor turns out to be, or your conspiracy theory turns out to be not accurate, because there are other purposes being served by the sharing of this conspiracy theory other than fact-finding. So, you're saying you and I are in the same group, and I'm somebody that's in the know about this kind of stuff, so I'm enhancing myself and I'm enhancing our bond. And if it turns out to be not true, I've already served those purposes. It functioned, it did the things that I was motivated to do with it, and the fact that it wasn't true was only one minor consideration. And so I'm easily forgiven by my in-group. Although conspiracy theories may be part of a functioning democracy, they also can be dangerous. And a lot of these researchers are trying to figure out ways that people can reduce the amount of conspiracy theorizing. And one possible intervention governments can make is empowerment. And these researchers consider it more effective than actually just rationally refuting conspiracy theories. Partially because rational reasoning is not really the root cause of conspiracy theories. And by empowerment, they're talking about making citizens more able to affect the government, having the government be more transparent, having having people be more effective, and having their voice heard is empowering to people. And when people are more empowered, they are less prone to conspiracy thinking. One of the researchers found that people tend to be, if they're in a minority political party, or they're whatever party, whatever thing they're into is unpopular, they will sometimes create conspiracy theories to explain why their ideas haven't blossomed like they felt they should. There's obviously somebody suppressing it or somebody going against it that's very powerful, right? It allows them to keep the feeling that their ideas are good and their ideas are important, and it's just that the powers that be are keeping them down, keeping them small, not allowing their ideas to spread. Because if people could hear about this, everybody would like it. So there must be some evil force that is stopping us. On the other hand, one of the things that several of these authors pointed out is that people who are conspiracy theory enthusiasts are not necessarily mentally ill. Most of them are not ill in any way. They might be more anxious than the usual person, but it's not in a mentally ill way. It's just on the spectrum of normal. They're just a little more anxious. What they're saying is there's no reason to stigmatize anybody who believes in conspiracy theories. They are not crazy. Not necessarily, anyway. Some people have argued that the internet is responsible for this conspiracy theory craziness, but there were plenty of conspiracy theories before the internet, and there was even one study here that showed that belief in the John F. Kennedy assassination conspiracy actually went down with the rollout of the internet. In one of the chapters, they kind of went into detail about what different journalists said about conspiracy theories starting in 2017, and how this is the age of conspiracy theories. And then back further in another major magazine that said conspiracy theories are off the charts, higher than they've ever been. And then they went all the way back to 1964 when it was like, this is the age of conspiracy theories. And their point that they were making is that we've always had them, and this is not any new phenomenon. And journalists have a tendency to overstate things, or because they just came on the scene, they think it's just exploded, or they just started paying attention, so now they think it's gone nuts. But it's always been here. And actually, I have to say that even when I started looking into conspiracy theories, now I see them everywhere. I think that's just what happens. You buy a new car of a particular type, and then you see them all the time on the road. It's like you just start noticing them, but they've always been with us. I think I'm going to end on this. One of the things that came across here is the history of the term conspiracy theory. The first use of it was in the 1800s. And then the first use of it that really meant the same thing that we mean today was in 1909. The reason I bring this up is that I saw two people actually in the last few days, I saw make a comment that said the CIA invented the term conspiracy theory in order to discredit people who were accusing the CIA of killing John F. Kennedy. And I thought it was just really interesting that even the term conspiracy theory has a conspiracy theory. Okay, I think that's about it. I hope you've found this subject as fascinating as I do. I'm sure I'm going to do more podcasts about it in the future. But that's all for now. This is Adam Lee Kahn on The Atom Bomb.